everybody wants to be a world champion, but who wants to put in the work and do what it takes to get there? That is something I would love to see more in our youth today is that, hey, you want it? Go get it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to season 5 of Beyond the Steps, presented by Apolla Performance and Turning Point Dance Creations. Today, we're discussing, should I do all-star cheer or high school cheer? This is a big one. We see a lot of kids conflicted about this year in and year out. And now we're going to tackle it with somebody who can share some great insight with us. It's another good conversation. Melissa, tell everybody out there what we've got coming up today.
We are so excited to have Brantley Jittu, a leading figure in the cheer industry who combines over 20 years of experience as an athlete, choreographer, and judge. Welcome, Brantley.
Thank you so much, Melissa and Bree. It's an honor to be here. And yes, this is a definite pertinent topic, and I'm so excited to dive in with you today.
In the spirit of today's conversation, talking to people who are trying to make a decision, if you could go back in time and give your younger self advice on navigating the choice between all star or high school cheer, what would that advice be?
Yeah, absolutely. So, in order for me to answer this question, I have to go back and think, what was it like for me when I was an athlete growing up and had that conversation and had that choice of whether to do all star or high school? And to be honest, I did both. And I know that that's kind of not. So, what I would suggest is think about the differences between the two. All-Star, as I just mentioned, is has that flashy glitz and glam, very performative, intricate and creative style to it. High school cheer has this very traditional crowd leading game day aspect that if that attracts you, go full force into that. Um, Personally, when I was in high school, I wanted that game day experience. I wanted to be on the field cheering on our team, and I wanted to be with all of those friends of mine from high school cheer that weren't in All Star as well. So I needed to get a little taste of both. However, that's a big commitment to being a part of both All-Star and high school cheer, right? So that's kind of where this conversation comes to a head, right? Is if you had to decide, what would you do? And I would say in the short term, in the short answer, think about what it is that you're after, what it is that you love. Are you out there to perform and compete only, or do you love that game day experience?
So this is interesting to me because I know like a lot of us say back in the day we did this. We come from the dance world and we were talking before this conversation about the parallels. In dance it's not necessarily possible to do it all anymore. Do you think it's still possible in cheer all these years later to do it the same way that you did, or do you think you almost are forced to choose at this point?
There's 2 parts to that question. And so one being in dance, there's so many different styles, right? Pom, lyrical, hip hop, all these different styles that you're able to compete in. So kind of in the dance side of things, you're already competing multiple times in that space and training multiple styles. In cheer, you have the different components that make up competitive cheerleading, like stunts, tumbling, dance, jumping, and all of those types of things, but you're competing them all in 1 2.5 minute routine. So, with that being said, I think we could talk about within All Star, you can double team, like you can cross over to another team, but there's a limit on that. So, you're not getting burnt out. And so when people wanna do more to kind of maybe what you could say equal the same amount as like a dancer who's competing in 4 categories, cheerleaders can now also go into that high school realm, and they could also be competing on that high school stage, which again, if you were to put it apples to apples, it's almost like a completely different style of cheerleading that they're getting to access.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So, for those people that are watching that really, might be faced with this decision for the first time and don't really understand, because parents only know what they know, and we know that, right? Like they're doing their best, but they don't have a lot of information or experience oftentimes. When we're talking about all star cheer versus high school cheer and unveiling those differences, and I hear you saying, you sort of talked about the differences in the aesthetic. But talk a little bit about the skill level required in one versus the other, the training intensity that's required. We talked about style, but talk about those other things that might help people make those decisions better.
Absolutely. So, when you're looking at a high school cheer team, you're looking at your school, and that's it. So, your options for being on that team are really geared towards whatever level that team is. If you have a multi-state and national title winning school team, you might really struggle to even make that team when there's already, a limited amount of people who can be on that team and they may all have the skills. So that's where All-Star might be an option for you because there's so many different levels that you can participate in. When I started in All-Star, way back in the mid 90s, there weren't real levels like there are today. The USASF as the governing body of the sport did not exist. The world championships did not exist. I mean, it was really like, sure, throw it all out there and see what you got. Now today there's the prep division, the novice division, like outside of just the elite level 1 through 7 categories. So it's geared to help more people access the sport that maybe wouldn't be able to otherwise. But then again, in a school environment, there's also a feeder program that goes towards that, which we would call down here in the Southeast, like Pop Warner. Or maybe if you're on the West Coast or somewhere else, you might call that youth or recreational cheer. And so that program feeds more into a school dynamic because they're having that game day experience in addition to the competition. Whereas in All Star, you're simply just getting competition. Your point about the training, it depends. Again, oftentimes in that youth setting, most of the coaches are volunteer parents that are there supporting their kid. They go to conferences and try to learn, but they're volunteering to teach. Maybe they cheered back in the day and they want to bring that love back to their kids and share it with their community. And what a beautiful thing. I love all cheer. Like just to put it out there, like I think it's all great and it's reaching all different types of people.
Do you feel like the foundational training is better in one versus the other for younger kids that are looking to get into those feeder programs? Like, where are they getting that solid foundational training that they could then later choose either one?
If you want to be elite, if you want to go towards that world's level, then All-Star is going to be the place for you. So in an All-Star environment, most likely you're going to have more equipment. You're going to have spring floors, tumble tracks, crash mats, a multitude of coaches. Whereas in a school setting, you might have just the regular dead mat, which is a regular foam mat that we call dead mat. And, trying new skills on just a dead mat can be a little intimidating when, you're just starting out and learning. So, regardless of where you go, I would say look at what the coaches are producing. If you can see the results and that's something you want, then that's a good place for you. And then look at the level of commitment that you're willing to put in as well. Like I always say, like, everybody wants to be a world champion, but who wants to put in the work and do what it takes to get there? And if you're and not every it's not for everyone, and that's okay. Like that's why there's so many different places to participate.
Brantley, there are so many young athletes that are overextended these days and want to do everything. And then, even when you kind of go, narrow it down, there's some who are like, "Oh, I want to do all-star and I want to do high school. I want to do both of them." And what I have found in dance is when people do two things, you often end up disappointing or not being able to meet the commitments of one or the other. So, what are the potential challenges and rewards of the approach of saying, I'm going to do high school and I'm going to do all star? And what are the pitfalls of that as well?
Absolutely. I live by the principle that when you say yes to something, you're saying no to everything else. And And also, your no protects your yes. I was that person who tried to do it all, and I literally filmed myself on my drive to the gym right before this podcast being like, "You're doing it all, like, which one's better?" Like, committing and trying to do everything and maybe not being excellent or doing it to the fullest on one end, or saying no to some things and really excelling at something else. I think that's a personality trait, and so you might be able to be successful in either one. I think personally, I've succeeded in that, but it's exhausting, right? Like, let's be real. And with the added pressures of today's youth, especially when you have your phone in your hand and everyone's constantly being asked to be productive all the time, that pressure can really be overwhelming on top of school, right? Like on top of all of that. So what I've noticed, and my school did this, which is kind of what actually forced to limit me, is they made it a rule that if you were on the high school cheer team, you could not do All Star. I think that's a little bit of a bummer because to the degree, a lot of the talent on our high school team were people who trained in All Star. So if you cut them from that, it kind of it limits your talent pool. It limits your training, especially if you don't have a strong training aspect in your school program. Also, like when I was trying to be an AP English my senior year and my junior year teacher was like, "Let's just go with honors." And I was like, "Thank you for saying no to me." Like sometimes you need to be told no, and that's okay. As you're becoming an adult, you're going through the stresses and the pulls of figuring out who you are and what works for you. And that's where having guidance and people in your corner to talk to, whether that's your parents, a coach, your other athletes that you're going through the experience with, talking that out and trying things, this is the time to do it. So try it, I would say. Like try it, put boundaries within it, have an agreement with your parents and your coach before you go in. I also did musical theater. So not only was I on the dance teams, the cheer team, both cheer teams, I was also trying to do musical theater. And it's a lot. And like to your point earlier, sometimes it conflicts. And having a plan up front on how to execute that with everyone involved in communicating clearly is key if you're going to do both. And if not, celebrate and live fully in what you're doing and be full out in what you do commit to.
A lot of times, yeah, I agree. A lot of times they'll make that decision for you because schools won't work with the dance studios or the all-star teams or vice versa. And so it kind of is made for you. But I think it does take a very specific personality to be able to execute that and not create massive anxiety. Right. So
Bree, you made a really good point. Like, you brought me back to a memory of that year I tried to do musical theater and the cheer and the dance during the school season. And our owner of our cheer gym, our all-star gym, had a rule. You cannot miss the last two practices before a competition or they take you out, and which protects the team and the ability to get out there, right? Which is to your point, like if you're somebody who has committed to one thing, but you have all these people who are multiple things that they've committed to, and now it's impacting your practice. I will say, my teammates were amazing. I had to miss one of the practices before competition, and they all rallied behind me so I could be in the musical, and they made an extra practice so that we could have our true two practices before. And talk about teamwork, right? Talk about a willing to commit. But at the same point, I got to perform in a Broadway musical, Bring It On the Musical, and do the national tour. And that's cheerleading and musical theater. And without that training in my life, I don't know that I could have done that with my professional self. So if you know where you're going and you know where your passion lies and you're a good teammate to those around you and you communicate to others, it can be done. But just know sacrifice is a real thing.
it is a real thing. It is a very real thing. So, in that spirit, understanding the trade-offs that are involved, we've talked about some of the disadvantages and the advantages of pursuing each of those paths. So we talked about, time commitment and skill development, a little bit about where you might succeed in those areas, right? The social aspects and the cost. Let's talk about those two things.
Absolutely. So, yeah, let's dive into cost first. Obviously, in school cheer, there's going to be a limit. The school board, the principal, like there's so many checks and balances that keep the clubs and the sports in a school accessible, right? So, the cost already it's going to be way more affordable. Things that you might pay for in cheer, regardless of whether you're in school or all star, it's going to be competition fees, uniform fees, your bow, your makeup, which is funny because like in soccer, you don't think I have to pay for makeup, but In cheer and dance, you do. It's part of being on stage, right? Really, those are gonna be kind of those foundational costs. In All-Star, additionally, you're gonna be paying your gym membership fee. So basically, like, what pays for you to have coaches and to keep the lights on in the facility, to pay for all the equipment that you're getting to use. So those costs become a little bit more. When you look at the 2 different styles, a school cheer uniform is gonna be very clean cut, all American traditional. It's not gonna have a lot of stones. It's not gonna have a lot of flash and flare and all the extras. Whereas in All-Star, it is a full-on, like, Cirque du Soleil performance style. So you're gonna have the crystals, the Aurora Borealis crystals, and all the things that, yes. And so with that, the range of cost can go up. However, again, I think what people don't also realize is, All-Star programs would not stay open if that was the only thing they had available. As you rise in level and competitiveness, that's where the increase in cost, because you're traveling now for competition. You might be paying for hotels, flights, and all the things. And it might be up to, 6 to 10 times in a season that you're traveling or competing. So
Is it really that much? It gets up there, huh?
it does. And so it depends on the level, it depends on the team, it depends on how many teams you're on. But yeah, so those are kind of where the added costs can kind of change. But again, in All-Star, the prep and novice categories, they're only allowed to compete 1 day. So even if it's a 2-day event, they're only competing 1 day. And that's intentional to limit the amount of cost and travel and commitment families are making as they're entering into the sport. So there are ways to get your full experience in competitive cheer, whether it's school or all-star, and not be completely destitute by the end of it all. And there are amazing fundraisers out there. I mean, listen, when I started in All-Star, I was 6 years old. My mom owned a gift basket shop, and next door opened All-Star Cheer Gym, and I was, like, enamored, but right after I started there, my parents ended up having a divorce, and a lot of the financial situation had changed, and, the owner of the gym taught me a real key lesson at 7 years old, and she said, "Brantley, you're never gonna cheer here for free. Nothing in life is free. So what are you gonna do? If you want this, what are you gonna do to keep it?" And I cleaned that gym at 7 years old, worked it, and, obviously, she helped out, but, like, I worked for it, right? And that is something I would love to see more in our youth today, is that, "Hey, you want it? Go get it. Go get it." And I think cheer and dance are a special place for kids to learn those types of lessons as well.
Brantley, from high school to college. That's a big one because a lot of people are aspiring to be on the big screen there in collegiate cheer. Does participating in All Star versus high school improve those odds at all? Does one improve it more than the other? What are your thoughts on that?
I would say absolutely yes. If you participate in all-star cheer, chances are you're getting the ability to train higher level skills. Why? Again, it goes back to your pool of athletes. At your school, you are limited to who is at your school, period. In an all-star environment, you're mixing all of those schools together, and those athletes are all coming together to train, and when you're bringing the cream of the crop from each school into that environment, it pushes you to that higher level. However, the one thing all-star cheerleaders who have never done school cheer lack when it comes to a college tryout is that game day ability to lead a crowd.
That's a very special skill, right? Because I mean, I dabbled in it in high school, but it is very, very challenging to stand in front of a crowd that size and really get everyone pumped up and keep them pumped up, and keep your energy level up, especially if the team is losing and all the things, right?
Absolutely. College nationals is a show. I mean, it is entertainment to the T, not only because of the skills, but like you just said, they are out in their universities hitting those crowds on a weekly basis and to then bring that to the competition mat, it lights up the arena like no other. But you can definitely tell when you're sitting there, whether I'm judging or even just enjoying it as a spectator, you can tell the teams that are dialed in and leading that crowd versus the ones that are using that as their little bit of a break to kind of breathe and let the crowd carry the cheer for them. And it can make or break your first place landings. So I did both. So I'm partial to that. I would say school cheer focuses on sharpness, motions, leading the crowd, spirit. I mean, let's go back to what cheerleading originally was about, right? It's about energizing the crowd and getting them to cheer on your team, right? It requires your energy and your spirit to shine through you to light up a big stadium. And if you don't ever practice that, well, it could be a little flat, right? But being out there on the field or being on the court and being able to practice lighting up a crowd like that, it really does give you an advantage when you're going into these college tryouts.
What is important to have on that resume, so to speak, when you're applying or trying out for those collegiate teams?
If we're thinking about all types of cheerleaders, not just like the ones you might see on, Netflix with Cheer and Navarro and, like these big Kentucky or, these are the cream of the crop type teams. Most of those athletes are going to have had all-star experience and it's going to have helped them bring that level of skill up. Not all, but you're going to be expected to also be cream of the crop when it comes to leading the crowd. And so you have something like transferable skills. If you're competing on an all-star worlds team, you're going to have the ability to let the light shine in your eyes and perform. You're going to know how to do that well. And that's going to transfer into what you're doing on the collegiate level. However, if we're looking at the broader strokes of things, like I went to a private university in Los Angeles that didn't have a football team, and I cheered there, and while I was also on the California All-Stars winning worlds. Like and so there's a plethora of people coming through. And so if you don't have a standing back tuck, it didn't really matter. Like you were probably going to make the team. But did you need to know how to lead a crowd? Absolutely. It could be different depending on what type of college cheer team you're going for or high school cheer team. It's not all going to be just that cream of the crop. So don't let it deter you if you are interested in going out for your college team and you don't have all-star experience. Again, be fully committed to whatever you decide. And maybe you didn't even do high school cheer, but now your college team is like something you see as attainable, you want to do it. Go for it. You never know, you know?
Yeah. Oh, I love it. So I want to go back to cost for a second from a parent's perspective. It can be a significant financial commitment. Do you have any idea, ballpark it, the average cost difference between participating in high school versus all star? And what hidden costs would you caution people to be aware of, or are there hidden costs?
Absolutely. I would say for a high school cheer team, you could expect to pay somewhere around $1,000 for the season. You've got your uniform costs, and those could be a couple $100. If you're hiring a choreographer or music, then chances are it's not going to be like, for example, a cheerleading world's mix can go as high as $5,000 just for the music. And so, yeah, so when you're looking at a school cheer team, a lot of times, they may use something like a pre-made mix. And there's quality music out there that's pre-made. I mean, cheersounds.com does an amazing job with theirs, and it's totally affordable. Like, so it doesn't have to be super cost prohibited. Um, and and so probably around $1,000 is a good place to consider for a school cheer team because you also have those competition fees and maybe a couple of the, got to pay for the bus to everybody ride the bus to the competition, or, I mean, at least I don't know if they do that anymore, um, but on the all-star side, you can think somewhere around maybe even $150 a month just for like having your practices. And then you've got practice wear, you've got your uniform, and then the range of what you're paying for goes up depending on the pizzazz. And so you know, like I said, if the mix is $5,000, your choreography, could be $5,000 for the team. And then, so that's $10,000 spread out. Plus, you have your competition fees. Typically, All Star, because all they do is compete, All Star is going to be competing a lot more than maybe a school cheer team. And school teams may be able to go to competitions that are charging a flat rate for the team at like 250 versus an all-star event might be charging 250 just for you to participate alone. And then, I know there's a whole conversation out there in the event side. So like cheer competitions, we call events. So on the event side, if they're also requiring you to stay to play, like that's a big conversation right now. If you're required to stay at a hotel that's jacking their rates up because they know it's required for you to stay there, like that's another cost. And so, but again, I would love to not lump all of that in and say that's All Star when it's a portion of All Star as you rise up into the elite categories. But there's still ways like in prep and novice, and even in the lower levels of All Star to not have to do it that way. There are teams in All-Star that also use the pre-made mixes, that also use, like, not blinged out uniforms because they want to make it cost effective for people to participate.
I think those are all that's a lot of times where parents get tripped up is they forget to add in all those travel costs, right?
Do your research when you're looking at where you're gonna place your child because there, all most all-star programs have a parent packet. They have all of this information. They have an onboarding meeting where they let everybody know these things. And that's a conversation to have during tryouts. Like, again, I'll tell you a personal story. When I was growing up, so there's this tumbling skill called a full. It's where you flip your body and you twist once. I had that at like 9 years old. And so everybody during tryouts was like, "Oh, you're going to make the traveling elite team, right?" And I made the novice team. And everyone was like, "What?" And I didn't know. I was so upset because everybody's telling me, "You shouldn't be on that team." And I was confused because I was like 8 years old, 9 years old. But what I didn't know is my parents had that conversation with the gym owner and were like, "Look, we can't afford to travel him. So you're on this team." But I mean, I did it and I had a full and I loved it. You know what I mean? Like, so at the same time, have those conversations, be upfront about what your circumstances are, and then, you know, don't spend in excess of what you can afford. And you will still have an amazing time regardless.
Red flags, that's where I wanna go to, the red flags that are waving. Unfortunately, not every gym and not every program is the most supportive and safe, for children or youth athletes, or even parents for that matter, both mentally and physically. So what are some of the red flags that parents or adults should look for when selecting a gym or high school program, to avoid just potential harm for their athletes?
First and foremost, and I think I kind of alluded to this earlier, look at what the program is producing. Are they producing athletes who are happy, who are gaining skills, who have a good team dynamic? Or are they pitting the athletes against one another in competition and tearing people down? That would be what I would look at. Look at the results that they're producing because the results don't lie. Again, with school, it is what it is. That's what you're limited to. You're at your school. You can't really change anything about that. So meet with the coaches, meet with some of the team, go watch a game. Look at the results at competition if that's something that you care about. And if that's a vibe and that's a fit for you, and 'cause all I can think about is like at school is when people it's either your cheer team was good or your dance team was good, and one of them was getting made fun of. Right? So, like, if your team's not good in an all-star setting, there's more options. There's multiple different teams, multiple different coaches and levels. You can find somebody who you vibe with. You can take private lessons with a coach that you're connecting with. And so I would look at the options they provide. I would look at the culture. Look at their handbook. Like, if they don't have that blasted out on their handbook and on their wall, and when you walk in to see what their core values are, chances are they don't really stand on any. And that doesn't mean that's fully the case if they aren't blasting it out, but find out what those are. And when you're being interviewed to see if you're a fit for their team, interview them back. Are you a fit for my child? What do you stand on? What are your principles? How do you train your coaches? What is the standard here? Are you positive reinforcement? Are you growth mindset? Or how do you handle conflict within the team? Tell me an example of how you resolved this conflict with two of your athletes on a team in the past. How did you handle that? A lot of times, people will shift from one gym to another, and they are called gym hoppers, right? And they can be stigmatized. So these athletes and these parents can be stigmatized as being the problem because if they're hopping around, it's probably them and not everybody, not the gyms, right? But at the same point, that's not always true, right? And so when you're looking for the right program, sometimes it takes a season for you to discover that, I think this just isn't a fit and that's okay. And then we move and we try something else. But most often I say people look for a gym to attend based on location. Because do you really want to drive an hour and a half to go beyond this team?
I mean, no, but like again, it's this past weekend. A mom was telling us she drives 2 hours to her gym one way for a 2-hour practice and then drive home 2 hours. So, I mean, and that and I when I asked, I said, "Why do you do that? Like, what is it that makes you do that?" And it's the training. We can't get it anywhere else in our area, and it's the best one, and that's where we're going, and that's how they have committed as a family, and it absolutely is being done. So it's what might seem crazy to some. It's like I love that you keep going back to ask yourself what your goals are and what your goals are for your family, your child, and what you're willing to do for this, right? So, Brantley, one of the things that we do every single week on this show is we give those out there watching homework, something where they can add value or improve in on this topic or help with this topic between now and next week's episode. So, what is one thing you want to assign our watchers and our viewers and our listeners to do between now and next week?
I would say sit down and and take a few minutes to journal with yourself. And I want you to ask yourself the question, what do I want? What do I want with my life? Who do I want to become? And just spend some time and just start writing stream of conscious and let it come out of you. And then reread that and kind of circle the things that indicate to you this is my path. This is what's my calling. This is who I want to be. And then as you identify those things, look at, okay, this is my goal. This is my target. What are the steps it would take to become that best version of myself? And then write those down and then just start applying them little by little every single day and you will become it. You will become it if you take stay on that path.
I love that. Thank you. That is totally doable. So everybody better get out those journals. And we have the same homework every single week, which is to take our Steps Initiative course. We're going to pop that link up on the screen for you. It is the catalyst to this show. It is completely free, 5-part course series. Every module was created by experts in their field. We're going to talk about things and give you evidence based research and resources on things like racism, gender inequity, nutrition, psychology, medicine, and science, and how those things apply to performance athletes. So you can lay a foundation for your knowledge, and hopefully it inspires you to dig a little bit deeper on your own, because when you know better, you do better. And creating those safe spaces for performance artists are so, so, so important, and athletes. But Brantley, you mentioned a couple different things in this episode as far as resources. You mentioned cheersounds.com is a great place for people to go. But what other resources did you want to share with the people watching today who might be faced with this decision, or just amazing things for them to know?
Absolutely. Well, one thing we talked a lot about was the cost. And I know there's two separate ways to go about that. One is a fundraiser. And one that has worked for me and my teams in the past is Double Good Fundraising. They are also huge supporters of the cheer and dance community. And it's just so simple to raise funds with them. You just share a link, It's really easy, and the popcorn is delicious as well. So, yeah, it's a popcorn fundraiser, and it only is open for 4 days, and so it really helps you to be real dialed in on it, and we made great money with that for my, open co-ed team. The other one is a group called Love Michael, LUV Michael, and it's more of a service project, but it's designed in the same way that Double Good is. And what it does is it raises awareness about adults with autism. It provides them work and housing because once they've aged out, and listen, we work with a lot of exceptional athletes in our community. And at the World Championships, I actually get to help host the Exceptional Athlete Gala. And so all of the athletes come together with special needs and they compete at the World Championships and we throw a big bash for them and it's amazing. And the thing is once they age out, a lot of the services that have helped them and they're becoming an adult go away. But Love Michael is committed to helping them beyond just their youth years. So it's the same thing. You share a link, you're raising awareness about adults with autism. 50% of the proceeds go to your team, and then 50% goes to providing housing and food for, or and work for.
Thank you for sharing those. Those are I mean, I've never heard of either one, so that's absolutely wonderful. And how can people get in touch with you? Tell us anything that you I know you have some new exciting things happening that I would love for you to share with everybody. Just tell us all the ways that people get in touch with you and what you have going on.
Yeah, absolutely. So our choreography company is BLegit Choreography. There's a little play on the name, Brantley Jittu, BLegit. And it's something that I live by, honestly. I made these bracelets that say be legit, be excellent, be great. And it's a reminder of how you want to live life, right? Do it your best. We've got one shot at this. So you can find us on Instagram, well, TikTok sort of, with everything going on. I know, right? Yeah, so, but you can find us on our social medias at Be Legit Choreography, and that's spelled BLEJIT, and then choreography, CHOREOGRAPHY. I know that's a mouthful. But Be Legit Choreography, and then you can find us on our website as well at belegit.com, BLEJIT.com. But yeah, we have some pretty exciting things that we just announced this past year at the national conference. One of the big pieces of feedback we were getting from our customers was, listen, we love you. We love working with you. It is a struggle for us to travel our choreographers in and honestly for our athletes to be learning the routine in 9 hours over 2 days. It's just a lot. So we listened to our customers' feedback and we developed the maxed out routine. It's a digitally delivered routine. You get your A count sheets, animated formation maps, you get licensed music, you can see where the athletes are moving on the stage with the music. It's a game changer. And honestly, like I started doing virtual choreography when I moved from California to Florida and then COVID happened and everybody was like now ready for this. And so it's perfect. But yeah, we have a patent pending process that delivers this digital routine to you and it really does allow you to teach your athletes the routine over time that works best for you. And it's guaranteed to max out the difficulty on the score sheet, whatever rubric you're on. So
And you're not having to pay the choreographer tens of thousands of dollars to come in and the travel and coordinate the scheduling and all the things that come with that. I think that's fantastic. What a great resource.
thank you. We want to make it accessible to as many people. Our goal, our mission is to bring cheer and dance to as many people across the globe as possible. I know that this sport changed my life at a young age, and I want to make sure that we make that impact for everyone that we can.
Well, I have to tell you, your energy, you are just such a special soul. Like, I have just loved talking to you. I know Melissa has too. Like, we're just thrilled to have you. This was a fantastic, really informative conversation, especially for I think those parents that are out there that are maybe facing this for the first time and don't really understand what way to go with all of this for their young athletes. So, thank you so much for your time and your energy and all of the wisdom you've shared with us today. You are really truly something special. Like it just pours out of you, your passion for what you do. And we so appreciate you being here today.
Thank you so, so much. I really appreciate it. And thank you both for hosting this and getting the word out and sharing with so many people. It's been an honor.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who watched today. We were talking about All-Star Cheer versus High School Cheer. It was a great combo. Definitely go back and listen from the beginning. If you did not catch it from the beginning, you can find them on YouTube and on Facebook at Apolla Performance and at TP Dance Creations. I am Melissa McDaniel Grisham. Join us next week as we welcome back our friend, dance educator, mental health advocate, and podcaster, Lauren Ritchie. She is a repeat guest on Beyond the Steps, and we are so happy to have her back next week. Until next time, continue your journey beyond the steps. Bye.
Bye, everybody.